Margaret woke on scorching asphalt, her husband dying beside her, a frightened chicken, an old suitcase. Her own children had left them to die. But inside that worn case, a $20 million secret, and justice would come. Margaret's eyes opened to searing heat. The sun burned down on her face like a furnace, and for a moment, her mind refused to accept what her body already knew. She was lying on asphalt. Hot, cracked, unforgiving asphalt. Her fingers scraped against the rough surface, and the sensation sent a jolt through her 72-year-old body. Asphalt? How could she be on asphalt? She blinked against the merciless light, her vision swimming. When it finally focused, her world shattered into 1,000 pieces. A road. She was on a deserted country road. "Harold!" Her voice came out strangled, raw with panic. "Harold!" To her left, crumpled on the sparse grass at the roadside, her husband lay motionless. Margaret's heart seized in her chest as she dragged herself toward him, her knees scraping on the hot ground. Her hands, weathered from 7 decades of life, of cooking and cleaning and caring, touched his face. He was burning up, sweating cold despite the heat. "Dear God, Harold, wake up! Please wake up, sweetheart!" He moaned softly, but his eyes remained closed. His breathing came quick and shallow, like a wounded bird struggling for air. That's when Margaret saw the suitcase. The old brown leather case, cracked at the corners, lay a few yards away, and beside it, pecking at the handle with curious determination, stood Pearl, the chicken, their pet chicken. Margaret felt her throat close up so tight she thought she might suffocate. Memories began flooding back in painful flashes, cutting through her mind like shards of glass. 8 hours earlier. "Mom, you need to get dressed. The appointment is at 10. Jennifer's voice carried that tone of efficiency Margaret knew all too well. It wasn't affection. It was impatience, barely concealed. Margaret had been in the kitchen preparing breakfast, as she'd done every morning for 52 years. Harold sat at the table with that exhausted expression of someone whose heart kept betraying him, refusing to beat properly. "What appointment, honey?" Margaret asked, turning from the stove. Jennifer sighed dramatically, as if her mother were a forgetful child. "The cardiologist appointment I told you about yesterday, Mom. The specialist. The one who's going to examine Dad." Margaret couldn't remember any such conversation, but lately her memory had been slipping. Or had Jennifer actually mentioned it and she hadn't paid attention? "What city is it in, dear?" "Out in the countryside, about 2 hours from here." Jennifer glanced at the expensive watch on her wrist. "And we need to leave in half an hour. Robert's already on his way to pick you up." Harold lifted his head from his plate, surprised. "Today? But I haven't prepared. I haven't gathered the test results." "Dad, I gathered everything." Jennifer's voice had that forced patience of someone explaining simple math to someone who'll never understand. "It's all in the suitcase. Documents, tests, prescriptions. We've taken care of everything." Something in her tone sent a chill down Margaret's spine, but she pushed the thought away. These were her children. They were taking care of them. "Let me at least shower, change clothes. Quick, Mom. The doctor won't wait." Margaret climbed the stairs of the house Harold had built brick by brick 43 years ago. In the bedroom, she chose her nicest outfit, a floral blouse she'd sewn herself and the linen pants she saved for special occasions. Special occasions. A medical appointment to save her husband's failing heart was special, wasn't it? When she came downstairs, Robert was already in the living room. Her youngest son, in that expensive suit and slicked-back hair, looked like a well-dressed stranger. "Morning, Mom." He didn't stand to kiss her. "Good morning, son. Thank you for taking us." Robert merely nodded, his eyes glued to his phone. "Mom," Jennifer appeared with the old suitcase in hand. "I packed some clothes in here, too, in case you need to stay overnight for tests, things like that." Margaret's heart raced. "Stay overnight? Just a precaution, Mom. Don't worry about it." Harold descended the stairs slowly, each step a battle against dizziness. Robert finally looked up from his phone and wrinkled his nose as his father approached. "Let's go. I'm running late." "Late for what?" Harold asked. "I thought you were taking us to the appointment." "I am, but I have commitments afterward." Commitments. The word sounded cold in the room. Margaret went to the backyard and picked up Pearl, who was scratching peacefully near the water trough. "Come on, my beauty. You're coming with Mama." "Mom, you're not bringing that chicken," Jennifer exploded. "And who's going to take care of her? The neighbor's out of town." Jennifer and Robert exchanged a look. That look Margaret couldn't decipher. "Fine," Robert said finally. "Bring the chicken." Whatever. As if nothing mattered. On the road. The car was new, smelling of leather and air conditioning. Margaret and Harold in the back seat. Pearl in a cardboard box at Margaret's feet. Robert drove in silence. Jennifer in the passenger seat scrolling through her phone. Nobody spoke. Margaret looked out the window, watching the city fall away behind them. Then came the outskirts. Then nothing. Just highway, dry brush, endless blue sky. "Pretty far, huh?" Harold commented, his voice weak. "Yeah," Robert replied curtly. More silence. Margaret felt her stomach turn. Something was wrong, very wrong, but what? These were her children. They were helping. After nearly 2 hours, Robert exited the main highway onto a dirt road. Narrow, deserted, no signs. "Son, is this really the right way?" Harold leaned forward. "Shortcut," Robert answered without looking back. The road became increasingly desolate. No houses, no cars, nothing but sun-scorched brush and dust. Robert stopped the car. Just stopped in the middle of nowhere. "Why are we stopping?" Margaret asked, her heart already accelerating. "I need to use the bathroom," Jennifer said, opening her door. "You guys get out too. Let's stretch our legs." Margaret looked outside. There was no bathroom. There was nothing. "Honey, but get out!" Jennifer's voice cut through the air like a whip. Harold and Margaret looked at each other, frightened. They climbed out slowly, Margaret grabbing the box with Pearl, Harold stumbling with dizziness. Robert got out too, opened the trunk, and threw the old suitcase on the ground hard. "There," he said. "There what?" Harold asked, confused. Jennifer approached, and Margaret saw something in her daughter's eyes she'd never seen before. Something cold, something dead. "You're staying here." Silence. "What do you mean we're staying here?" Margaret whispered, her voice failing. "Exactly what I said. You are staying here." Jennifer spoke slowly, as if explaining to stupid children. "But the appointment," Harold began. "There is no appointment, Dad." Robert pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, lit one with steady hands. "There never was." Margaret's world collapsed. You lied?" "We lied," Jennifer confirmed, without a drop of remorse in her voice. "It was the only way to get you out of the house without a scene." "But why?" Harold took a step forward, and Margaret saw his legs trembling. "What did we do?" "You don't fit into our world, Dad." Robert took a long drag on his cigarette. "I have an image to maintain. A multinational executive can't have parents who speak poorly, who dress badly, who embarrass him. And I'm getting married," Jennifer added, adjusting her expensive purse on her shoulder. "Marrying an important man. His family is high society. Do you really think I'd put you in my wedding? That I'd let my in-laws meet? This?" She pointed at them as if they were trash. "But we're your parents," Margaret whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We raised you. We gave you everything. And now we don't need you anymore." Robert flicked the cigarette to the ground and stepped on it. Simple as that. Jennifer was already getting into the car. "You can't do this!" Harold shouted, his voice coming out desperate. "We're your parents. Your parents." Robert got in the car, too, started the engine. Margaret ran to the driver's window, pounding on the glass. Son, for the love of God." The window rolled down just a crack. Robert looked at her with those empty eyes. "We're not your children anymore, Mom. And you're not our parents anymore." The window went up. The car reversed, turned, and accelerated. Margaret ran after it, screaming, stumbling, falling to her knees on the hot asphalt. No, come back. But the car only grew smaller, until it disappeared completely around the curve in the road. The silence that remained was the heaviest Margaret had ever heard in her life. Harold stood where they'd left him, staring at nothing. Margaret dragged herself to him, her hands bleeding where they'd scraped the asphalt. "Harold," he turned his face to her. He was pale, sweating cold. One hand clutched his chest. "Margaret, my heart." And he fell, collapsed like a rag doll, his body hitting the ground with a sound Margaret knew she'd never forget. "Harold! Harold!" She threw herself over him, shaking him, crying, screaming. "No, don't die. Don't leave me." Pearl emerged from the box and stood beside them, clucking softly, as if she too were crying. The sun rose higher. The heat intensified. And there, on that deserted road where their own children had dumped them like garbage, Margaret held her husband in her arms and prayed like she'd never prayed in her life. "Dear God, if you have any mercy, send someone. Please, send someone." The silence of the road was the only answer, until far in the distance, almost like a mirage in the heat, a dot appeared, a dot that grew, the rumble of an engine, a truck, an old white truck, dirty from the road, and it was slowing down. Margaret raised her hand, trembling, waving desperately. The truck stopped. The door opened. And down stepped a woman in blue coveralls, hair pulled back in a ponytail, eyes wide with shock. "Oh my God!" the woman whispered, running toward them. "What happened here?" Margaret looked at that unfamiliar face and broke down completely. My children abandoned us." Sarah Mitchell had seen strange things in 12 years driving trucks across American highways. She'd helped at accident scenes, talked down a desperate hitchhiker, once delivered a baby in the back of her rig when a young mother couldn't make it to the hospital. But never this. 2 elderly people collapsed on the roadside. A chicken, an old suitcase, and the purest desperation she'd ever seen stamped on a woman's face. Easy, easy now. Sarah knelt beside Harold, her knees hitting the scorching asphalt. She pressed 2 fingers against his neck, searching for a pulse. There. Faint, but there. He's alive. We're getting him out of here right now. My husband. His heart's bad, Margaret sobbed, words tumbling out in a rush. His medicine. It's in the suitcase. Our children. She couldn't finish. Broke down completely. Sarah didn't ask questions. Not yet. She pulled out her phone, dialed. "Emergency services. I need an ambulance. State highway about 15 miles past the Star gas station. Elderly man, mid-70s. Possible heart attack. He's unconscious." She hung up. Looked at Margaret. "Can you stand?" Margaret nodded, shaking. "Then help me. Let's get him in the shade of my truck while we wait for the ambulance." Together, the 2 women dragged Harold under the truck bed. It wasn't much, but it blocked the sun that was frying everything. Sarah pulled off her flannel shirt, staying in her tank top, and made an improvised pillow for his head. "You have water?" she asked Margaret. "No, I don't have anything. Just the suitcase." Sarah ran to the truck cab, returned with a bottle. She wet a cloth, pressed it to Harold's face. He groaned. His eyes moved beneath the lids. "That's it, Harold. That's it. Come back to us." "How do you know his name?" Margaret asked, surprised. "I don't. It's just, every elderly gentleman's either Harold or George, right?" Sarah smiled, but it was a sad smile. "My grandfather was Harold, too." Pearl scratched around them, pecking at the ground as if searching for food. Sarah looked at the bird, shook her head. "What kind of story is this? Elderly couple, chicken, deserted road?" She looked at Margaret. "Who does something like this?" Margaret lowered her head. The shame burned hotter than the sun. "My children." 2 words. Just 2. But they carried a world of pain. Sarah went quiet, breathed deep, pressed her lips together. When she spoke, her voice came low, controlled. "I understand." And she truly did. Margaret saw it in the eyes of this woman in grease-stained coveralls. 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours later. The ambulance arrived in a cloud of dust, sirens cutting through the road's silence. 2 paramedics jumped out, stretcher in hand. "What happened here?" the older one asked, already kneeling beside Harold. Sarah hesitated, looked at Margaret. Margaret looked at the ground. "Found them here," Sarah answered. "Think their car broke down. He got sick." A lie, but a necessary lie. The truth was too big, too painful to tell right there. The paramedics worked fast. Oxygen, IV fluids, machines beeping. Harold was placed on the stretcher, carried into the ambulance. "Ma'am, are you coming?" the paramedic asked Margaret. Yes, I am." "What about the chicken?" Sarah asked. Margaret looked at Pearl. The bird was the only thing she had left, the only one who hadn't abandoned her. "I'll take care of her," Sarah said. "You go with your husband. I'll bring the chicken and meet you at the hospital." "But you don't even know me." "Why would you?" "Because someone has to." Sarah picked up Pearl. The chicken didn't resist, as if she knew she was safe. Which hospital? County General, the paramedic replied. Downtown. I know it. I'll be there in half an hour. Margaret climbed into the ambulance. Before they closed the doors, she looked at Sarah. Thank you. Don't mention it. The doors shut. The ambulance sped away, and Sarah stood there holding a chicken, looking at the old suitcase lying on the ground. What a mess, she murmured. Grabbed the suitcase, walked back to her truck. Pearl clucked softly. Yeah, girl. I don't understand any of this either. At the hospital, 2 hours later, Margaret sat in a blue plastic chair, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the emergency room door. She hadn't cried anymore, didn't have the strength. She was empty. A nurse approached, clipboard in hand. Mrs. Margaret? She lifted her head. Your husband is stable. Severe dehydration, hypertensive crisis, beginning stages of heart attack. But we reversed it. The relief was so overwhelming Margaret felt her legs go weak. He'll be okay? He will, but he needs to stay a few days and… The nurse hesitated. Do you have insurance? Margaret shook her head. We'll go through Medicaid then. I just need you to fill out some information. The nurse handed her a form. His full name, social security number, address. Address. Margaret stared at the paper. What address would she put? The house wasn't theirs anymore. The children were probably already there, dividing up the rooms. Is there anyone we can call in case of emergency? Children, relatives. The word children pierced Margaret like a knife. No, there's no one. The nurse looked at her with pity but didn't push. Okay, we'll notify you here if anything changes. She took the form and walked away. Margaret sat back down. The hallway smelled of alcohol and medicine. People rushed past. A child cried in her mother's arms. A man coughed in the chair beside her. She was completely alone in the world. Mrs. Margaret? She turned. It was Sarah, still in coveralls, holding Pearl and the suitcase. The chicken's fine. Gave her water and some breadcrumbs I had in the truck. She sat beside Margaret. How's your husband? Stable. He'll be admitted for a few days. Thank God. Sarah set the suitcase on the floor. And after? Where will you go? Silence. Margaret didn't answer because she didn't know what to answer. Look, Sarah fidgeted with her hands, nervous. I know we just met. I know this might seem strange, but… She took a deep breath. You can stay at my place while your husband's admitted. It's not much, but there's a comfortable couch. And the chicken can stay in the yard. Margaret slowly turned her face. Looked at this woman who had stopped to help when the entire world had passed by. Why are you doing this? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Her eyes went distant, lost somewhere in the past. Because I know what it's like to be left behind. 3 days crawled by like 3 years. Margaret went to the hospital every morning. She'd sit beside Harold, hold his hand, talk softly. He improved gradually. Started talking again. Started smiling. But something in him had broken. Margaret saw it in his eyes. They didn't cool, did they? Harold asked one afternoon, his voice weak. No. Not Jennifer. Not Robert. No. He turned his face to the window. A tear rolled down. We failed, Margaret. We failed as parents. Don't say that. It's true. If it wasn't, they wouldn't have done what they did. Margaret squeezed his hand. We gave love, Harold. We gave everything we had. If they threw it away, that's their problem, not ours. But inside, she wondered if that was true. At night, Margaret returned to Sarah's house. It was small, simple, but clean. 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, a living room that fit a couch, and an old television. Make yourself at home, Sarah had said on the first day. My home is your home. And she treated Margaret that way. Not as a guest, as family. She'd make breakfast, ask how her day had been, sit to talk in the evenings. Do you have family, Sarah? Margaret asked one of those nights. No. My mother left me at a shelter when I was 15. Never saw her again. And your father? Never knew him. Margaret felt her chest tighten. I'm so sorry. I was too. For a long time. Sarah looked out the window at Pearl sleeping in the makeshift chicken coop. But I learned that family isn't who makes you, it's who stays. Simple words, but true as gold. On the 5th day, the hospital phone rang. The receptionist dialed Jennifer's number for the 3rd time. Protocol, critical patient, emergency contact had to be notified. Hello? Jennifer's voice sounded irritated. This is County General Hospital. We're calling about Mr. Harold, your father. He was admitted 5 days ago in critical condition and… Is he alive? Jennifer cut her off. The receptionist blinked, surprised by the direct question. Yes, he's stable now, but thank you for the information. Click. The call was disconnected. The receptionist stared at the phone, mouth open. In 15 years working there, she'd never seen a daughter hang up like that. She made a note in the system. Contact made. Family member showed no interest in visiting patient. On the 7th day, Harold was discharged. You can go home, the doctor said, signing papers. But you need absolute rest, no exertion. And the medication is essential, you can't stop taking it. Harold nodded. But what home? What rest? Sarah appeared in the doorway at that moment, smiling. Ready, Harold? I came to pick you up. Pick me up for where? Home. My home. She looked at Margaret, then back at Harold. Until you two get sorted out, you're staying with me. And I won't take no for an answer. Harold looked at Margaret. Margaret looked at him. In each other's eyes, they saw the same thing. Gratitude. In the truck, heading back, Harold asked, Sarah, we don't want to take advantage of your kindness. It's not kindness, Harold. It's… She searched for the right word. Necessity. My own. You see, spending your whole life alone gets exhausting. It's good to have people in the house. Margaret, sitting in the middle, took Sarah's hand. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. That night, at Sarah's house. Margaret was washing dishes when she saw it through the window. Sarah in the yard fixing the chicken coop with old boards. Hammering, sawing, sweating. She didn't need to do that. But she did it because she wanted to. Because she cared. Harold was in the living room, looking through the old suitcase. Sorting through papers, old photos, yellowed documents. Margaret, come look at this. She dried her hands, went to him. What is it? Harold held an official paper with a notary seal. I think it's something from my grandfather, but I can't quite make it out. Margaret took the paper, read slowly, frowned. I think we should show this to Sarah. But that night, they didn't show it. Put it back in the suitcase. Because sometimes, discoveries need to wait for the right moment, and that moment hadn't arrived yet. Pearl clucked from the new coop, settling in for the night. And in that small house where 3 broken lives had found each other, something remarkable was beginning to take root. Not charity, not obligation, but something far more powerful. Hope. Sarah was in the yard hammering the last board onto the chicken coop when she heard the scream. Not a scream of pain. Worse. A scream of someone who'd just discovered a betrayal so deep it ripped the ground from beneath their feet. She dropped the hammer and ran inside. Margaret stood in the middle of the living room, holding papers with hands shaking so violently the documents rattled in the air. Harold sat on the couch, white as a ghost, one hand pressed against his chest. What happened? Sarah looked from one to the other. Margaret turned her face. Her eyes were red, but not from crying, from rage. A rage so old and deep it seemed to burn from the inside out. They knew! Her voice came out like a dangerous whisper. They always knew. Knew what? Margaret threw the papers onto the coffee table. Sarah approached, picked one up. It was an old deed, yellowed by time, but the notary stamps were still legible. Riverside Ranch, Sarah read aloud. 150 acres. Property registered in the name of… Her eyes widened. Harold Mitchell. She looked at the old man on the couch. This is yours? Harold shook his head slowly, as if still trying to process. It was my grandfather's. He died when I was 20. Everyone always said the ranch had been sold, that nothing was left. But there was, Margaret cut in, her voice sharp as a blade. There was, and nobody ever told us. How did you find this? Sarah frowned. It was hidden. Margaret grabbed the old suitcase, turned it upside down and shook it. The checkered fabric lining was torn, hanging loose. Glued to the false bottom. I only found it because I was cleaning and the fabric started coming off. She pulled the rest of the lining. More papers fell to the floor like dry leaves. Envelopes. Many envelopes. Sarah knelt down, started picking them up one by one, all sealed, all with postal stamps, all addressed to Harold Mitchell, and all opened from the top, torn, read. "Someone intercepted these letters," Sarah murmured, turning an envelope in her hands. She looked at the postmark date. Years ago. "Someone was taking your mail before you could see it. The children." Harold spoke so quietly it was almost inaudible. "We'd been living with them the last few years. All the mail came to their house first." Sarah opened one of the envelopes. Inside, a letter from a law office. "Dear Mr. Mitchell, we are contacting you for the 5th time regarding the inheritance left by your grandfather, Nathaniel Mitchell. Riverside Ranch remains registered in your name and requires urgent regularization." She grabbed another envelope. Another office. "Mr. Mitchell, we attempted phone contact without success. We reiterate that you possess rural property valued at considerable market value." Another envelope. A letter from the county clerk. "We inform you that property taxes are in arrears. Please appear for regularization or the property will be subject to auction." Sarah stopped reading. Looked at Margaret. Margaret looked back at her. "How many letters are here?" Sarah asked. 13. Margaret pronounced the number like poison. 13 letters over 5 years, and we never saw a single one. The silence that fell in the room was so heavy it felt solid. "They hid them on purpose," Harold whispered, and for the first time his voice truly broke. "My children knew I had this ranch and never said a word." "Worse than that." Margaret picked up another paper from the floor. "Look at this one." It was a document from the county assessor, more recent. "Market appraisal. Riverside Ranch, due to location near the interstate and commercial potential, estimated value of $20 million. $20 million. The words hung in the air like smoke. $20 million. Sarah repeated softly. "They knew you had $20 million and still..." She couldn't finish the sentence, because there were no words to name that kind of evil. Hours passed in painful silence. Margaret sat on the porch, staring at the yard where Pearl scratched peacefully. The sun had already set, painting the sky orange and purple. Sarah brought a cup of tea, sat beside her. "How are you doing?" "I don't know." Margaret took the cup but didn't drink, just held it, feeling the warmth in her hands. "It's strange, you know. We always knew they didn't like us much. But one thing is not liking. Another thing is..." She couldn't continue. "Calculated cruelty," Sarah completed. "Yes, that's exactly it." Margaret finally looked at the woman beside her. "They knew we had value, and threw us away anyway. Maybe that's precisely why they did." Margaret frowned. "What do you mean?" "Think about it. As long as you were alive, the ranch was yours. But if you died..." Sarah left the words hanging. The understanding hit Margaret like a slap in the face. The inheritance would go to them. Exactly. Margaret felt her stomach turn. She put her hand over her mouth, breathed deep to keep from being sick. Dear God. Oh, dear God. Tears started falling. They didn't just abandon us. They wanted us to die. Sarah didn't respond, because there was nothing to say in the face of such brutal truth. Inside the house, Harold appeared in the porch doorway. His face was red, swollen. He'd been crying. A 74-year-old man who'd always been strong, who'd built houses with his own hands, who'd raised a family with dignity, and now cried because his own children had wished for his death. Margaret, he spoke with a hoarse voice, what do we do now? She looked at her husband, then at Sarah, then at the darkening sky. First, we're going to eat something. Then we'll think, because even in the deepest pain, life goes on. And people who'd survived 70 years of struggle don't give up easy. 3 days later, on a quiet morning, Sarah was finishing the breakfast dishes when someone knocked on the door. 3 firm, impatient knocks. She dried her hands, went to answer. On the other side stood a man in his 50s, short, prominent belly, glasses sliding down his sweaty nose. Good morning. Are you... Sarah, can I help you? The man looked over her shoulder, trying to see inside the house. Ah, well, I'm looking for Harold. Harold Mitchell. I was told he's living here. Something in the man's manner made Sarah cross her arms. Who's asking? Oh, sorry. He extended his chubby hand. Tony Wilson, Harold's cousin. Distant but cousin. Sarah didn't shake his hand. And how did you find this address? Tony laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. Ah, small town, right? Everyone knows everything. So I heard Harold was admitted to the hospital. Looked into where he'd gone after. And why do you want to talk to him? The question came out dry, direct. Tony blinked several times, sweated more. Well, it's family business, really. Private matter. Tony? Harold's voice came from inside the house. Tony, is that you? The cousin lit up. Harold! Cousin! It's been too long! He pushed past the door and entered uninvited. Sarah clenched her fists but let him pass. Harold was in the living room, in slippers and shorts, looking like he'd just woken up. When he saw his cousin, he didn't smile. What do you want here? Well, cousin, what kind of greeting is that? I heard you got sick, came to see how you're doing. After how many years without showing up? Harold sat on the couch, tired. 10? 15? Ah, Harold, you know how it is, right? Life gets busy, work. Where do you work again, Tony? The cousin hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. At the courthouse, county clerk's office. There it was. Margaret appeared from the kitchen at that moment, drying her hands on a dish towel. She stopped when she saw the visitor. Tony, sister-in-law, you look great. Tony opened his arms as if to hug her. She took a step back. Good morning, Tony. The atmosphere was strange, heavy. Tony felt it, but pretended he didn't. So, cousin, I came here because... He cleared his throat. Some papers came to the courthouse. Papers about that ranch of your grandfather, old Nathaniel. Harold didn't respond, just kept staring. And I thought, let me tell my cousin, because it's important stuff, inheritance stuff. Tony smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Did you know that ranch was never sold? It's still in your name. I know, Harold replied. Tony blinked. You know? I know, just found out. Oh, the cousin scratched his head, visibly uncomfortable. And, have you talked to the kids? With Jennifer and Robert? No. Oh, Tony looked around, sweated more. It's just that they also found out, you know, about the ranch's value. 20 million. That's a lot of money. How did they find out? Margaret asked, her voice sharp as a blade. I mentioned it. By accident. The other day, I ran into Jennifer at the grocery store. She asked about you, Harold, so You told her, Sarah cut him off. Tony looked at her as if he'd just noticed her presence. And you are... friend of the family. The real family. The message was delivered. Tony understood. Look, folks, I just came to warn you that the kids are looking for you. Jennifer called me yesterday, asked where you were, Harold. I didn't know, but I think they'll find out. Small town, these things. Thank you for the warning. Harold stood up. You can go now. But cousin, you can go. Tony left with his head down, mumbling apologies nobody wanted to hear. When the door closed, the three stood in silence. They're coming, Margaret whispered. They'll come after us. Let them come, Sarah spoke, and there was steel in her voice. Let them come and discover their prey is alive and has teeth. Margaret looked at her husband. Harold looked back. In each other's eyes they saw the same thing. It was time to fight back, not with violence, not with hatred, but with something far more powerful. The truth. 2 days passed in false calm. Margaret was in the yard hanging laundry when she noticed. Pearl stood in a corner, half hidden under a tree, not scratching, not clucking, just staying there, quiet. Pearl? Margaret approached. Come here, sweetheart. The chicken didn't move. Margaret crouched down, picked up the bird. She was too light and hot, too hot. Sarah! She called out, frightened. Sarah, come here. The woman came running from inside the house. What's wrong? Pearl's sick. She has a fever. Sarah took the chicken, felt her carefully, examined the bird's eyes, beak, feathers. I'm taking her to the vet, now. But it's Saturday. I don't even know if there's a vet open. Then I'll find one who'll open. Sarah was already grabbing her truck keys. Stay calm. I'll take care of her. And she left, carrying Pearl wrapped in a towel. Margaret stood there in the yard, staring at the empty space where the chicken had been. Harold appeared at the back door. What happened? Pearl's sick. He approached, put his hand on her shoulder. She'll be okay. But they both knew it wasn't just about the chicken. It was about everything. About their life that had collapsed and was now trying to rebuild on ruins. Harold? Margaret turned to him. Why do you think God let us suffer so much? He was quiet for a moment, looked at the blue sky, at the clouds drifting slowly. I don't think it was God who let it happen. I think we raised our children wrong. But we gave them love. We gave them everything. And they threw it away. But you know what I learned these last few days? He squeezed her hand. I learned that love doesn't go to waste. It just changes address. Margaret looked at Sarah's small house, at the simple yard, at the humble life they'd been gifted by a stranger. You're right, she whispered. It really did. When Sarah returned, night had already fallen. She came through the back door, carrying Pearl in a cardboard box lined with newspaper. The chicken was sleeping, breathing slowly. How is she? Margaret ran to her. The vet said it's an infection. Gave her antibiotics, some medicine. Said there's a chance she'll get better. How much did you pay? Sarah hesitated. Doesn't matter. Sarah. $200. But it doesn't matter, she's family. Margaret felt her eyes fill with tears. $200. A fortune for someone who drove trucks and lived on freight jobs. And Sarah had spent it without thinking twice. Honey, we'll pay you back. I don't want it. Her getting better is payment enough. She placed the box in a warm corner of the kitchen. Pearl opened one eye, clucked softly, went back to sleep. She'll be okay, Sarah said, but she seemed to be trying to convince herself. She will. That night, Margaret couldn't sleep. She lay staring at the box where Pearl rested, the chicken who'd been her companion for 8 years, the only living thing their children had left with them. And now she was sick, maybe dying. It can't be for nothing, Margaret whispered to the darkness. Nothing is for nothing. She got up slowly so as not to wake Harold, went to the kitchen, turned on the dim light above the stove, sat in the chair, looking at Pearl. You're strong, aren't you, sweetheart? Stronger than all of us put together. The chicken slept, but her chest rose and fell. She was breathing, fighting. Just like me, Margaret murmured. We don't give up easy. That's when she felt it. A strange clarity, as if someone had turned on a light inside her head. Pearl got sick when the children showed up. It wasn't coincidence. It was as if the bird had absorbed all the poison from that visit, all the hatred from those words, all the evil from those hearts. And now, she fought to survive, just like them. Mom? Margaret turned. Sarah stood in the kitchen doorway in pajamas, hair loose, sleepy eyes. Sorry, honey. Did I wake you? No. I couldn't sleep either. She sat in the chair beside her. Worried about Pearl? Yes. But it's not just that. Margaret looked at the woman who'd become a daughter in a matter of weeks. Sarah, why do you do all this for us? I already told you because someone had to. No, there's more than that. You spend your money, your time, your life on 2 old people who aren't anything to you. Sarah was quiet, looked at her own hands. When she spoke, her voice came out thick. Because I know what it's like to have nobody. I spent 35 years of my life alone. No mother, no father, no family. And it hurts, you know? Hurts so much that sometimes you think you'll die from the pain. She lifted her eyes. But then I found you two. And for the first time I had what I always wanted. I had parents. I had real family. Margaret reached out, took her hand. The two sat there, holding hands, looking at the chicken fighting to live. You know what I learned these last few days? Margaret asked. What? That family isn't who makes you. It's who chooses you, and who you choose back. Sarah squeezed her hand tighter. Then I choose you. Forever. And we choose you. In that small kitchen, in the silent early morning, 3 lives intertwined definitively. 2 old women who'd lost everything. 1 young woman who'd never had anything. And now, together, they had everything that mattered. The next morning, a decision was made. Harold sat at the breakfast table when Margaret appeared, already dressed, hair combed, determined expression. We need to go to a lawyer. He looked up. Lawyer? To settle the ranch? To make a will? To make sure our children never get their hands on what's ours? Harold nodded slowly. And who gets it? Margaret looked at Sarah, who entered the kitchen yawning, still in pajamas. Who deserves it? Sarah stopped, blinked. What? You heard right, Harold spoke, smiling for the first time in days. The ranch will be yours. No, no, no. Sarah waved her hands. I don't want your money. I didn't help out of interest. We know. Margaret approached, held the woman's shoulders. That's exactly why you deserve it. Because you gave love when we had nothing to offer. The three stood there, embracing in the middle of the kitchen. And from inside the box, Pearl clucked. A weak cluck, but firm. A cluck from someone who was going to survive. Because true love always survives, even when everything around it crumbles. 3 mornings later, in a lawyer's office. The office smelled of old paper and strong coffee. Margaret sat in a cracked leather chair, hands folded in her lap, looking at the attorney across the desk as if he were the last hope in the world. And maybe he was. So, Mrs. Margaret, Mr. Harold, Attorney Davis adjusted his glasses on his nose. You want to make a will leaving all property to? He looked at Sarah. To Miss Sarah Mitchell, who isn't a blood relative. Correct? Absolutely correct, Harold replied, his voice firm. The lawyer hesitated, drummed his fingers on the desk, looked at the papers, then at the 3 of them. You understand the children can contest this in court? Claim you were coerced, that you were under undue influence. Let them try. Margaret cut in. We have proof of abandonment. We have hospital records showing they never showed up. We have intercepted letters. Attorney Davis nodded slowly. Yes, that helps a lot. But, he looked at Sarah. Miss, you need to understand you'll face a legal battle. Direct heirs have rights guaranteed by law. 50% of the estate is theirs, no matter what happens. 50%, Harold repeated, chewing the words. And the other 50? That you can dispose of freely. You can leave it to whoever you want. Margaret and Harold looked at each other, had a silent conversation. With that language, only couples of 50 years develop. Then leave it like this, Margaret decided. 50% to Sarah, and to our children. She made a dramatic pause. $1 each. The lawyer choked on his coffee. $1? $1, Harold confirmed. That way they can't say they were forgotten. They were remembered, with exactly what they deserve. Attorney Davis tried to hide his smile, but couldn't. You're sure about this? Absolutely. Very well. I'll prepare the documents. He looked at Sarah. And you, miss, do you accept this responsibility? Sarah had been quiet since they entered the office. Looked at her hands, at the floor, anywhere but Margaret and Harold's eyes. Her voice came out shaky. I don't know if I deserve it. You deserve more than anyone we've ever known. Margaret held her hand. You gave us life when we were dying. You gave us love when our own children threw us away. But it's so much money, so much responsibility. That's exactly why it has to be you, Harold spoke. Because you don't want it. Those who don't want are the ones who deserve. Sarah finally lifted her eyes. They were full of tears. I swear I'll take care of everything. I'll honor your memory. No memory talk, Margaret cut in, smiling. We're still alive, and we plan to stay alive for a long time. 2 weeks later, the papers were ready. Margaret was signing the will when she heard noise outside. Loud voices. Argument. She looked out the office window. On the sidewalk, Jennifer argued with Robert, both gesticulating, red with rage. They found out. Margaret murmured. How? Harold stood up, went to the window. Tony, Sarah replied. Bet that gossiping cousin told them. Attorney Davis sighed. Do you want me to call security? No. Margaret straightened her shoulders. Let them in. I want to look them in the eyes when they witness we're in perfect sound mind. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. Bold, but legal. I'll call them. He went downstairs, returned minutes later with Jennifer and Robert. Both stormed in like invaders conquering territory. They stopped when they saw their parents. Harold stood beside the couch. Margaret sat in the armchair, both looking at their children as if looking at dangerous strangers. Mum, Dad, Jennifer forced a smile. We've been so worried. Worried, Margaret repeated slowly. How interesting. It's true, Robert joined the conversation. We looked everywhere for you. We were desperate when you disappeared. Disappeared, Harold repeated. We disappeared. How curious. The silence that fell was cutting. Jennifer exchanged a quick look with Robert, then changed strategy. Look, we know there was a misunderstanding that day, but we came to fix everything. To take you back home. What home? Margaret stood from the armchair. Your home where we were a burden, a nuisance, an embarrassment. Mom, it wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. Margaret's voice echoed through the small office. You threw us on a deserted road and drove away, wishing we'd die. Mom, for God's sake, we never... You knew about the ranch. Harold picked up the deed that sat on the small table, held it in the air. You knew about this paper, about these 20 million, and you hid it from us for years. Jennifer's face lost all color. Robert swallowed hard. They'd been caught, and there was no going back. The deed trembled in Harold's hand. Not from fear, from rage contained through 74 years of honest life, hard work, love wasted on children who didn't deserve it. Jennifer looked at the document, then at Robert. He loosened his tie, sweat on his forehead. Both had the expression of criminals caught red-handed. "Dad, let me explain," Jennifer began, but her voice came out weak. "Explain." Margaret took a step forward. "Explain how you stole our mail for years? Explain how you hid a fortune that was ours?" "We didn't steal anything," Robert exploded, losing his executive composure. "We just thought it better not to mention it. You'd get confused. You'd want to mess with things you don't understand." "Confused," Harold repeated, and there was something dangerous in the calm of his voice. "We'd get confused with our own money, but you weren't confused when you threw us on a road to die." Silence. A silence so heavy even the air seemed to stop. "You can go now," Margaret said. "We're done here." They signed with fury, the pen almost tearing the paper. They left slamming the door. And for the first time in weeks, Margaret felt she could truly breathe. The truth was out, and justice, finally, would be served. The first year at the ranch passed like a dream. It wasn't easy. There were mornings Margaret woke up crying. Nights Harold felt chest pain and they rushed to the emergency room. Weeks when money got tight and worry crept back in. But they were happy. Happy in a way they'd never been before. The house was finished. Simple but warm. Margaret painted the walls yellow, the color of sunshine. Harold built an enormous porch where they'd sit for hours watching the sky change colors. Sarah planted flowers everywhere until the yard looked like something from a storybook. The chicken coop grew. Pearl gained companions, 7 more hens. The matriarch commanded them like a general, and Margaret laughed every time she watched. "Just like you," Harold would tease. "Bossy, stubborn, but with a heart of gold." They planted a vegetable garden. Corn, tomatoes, lettuce, green beans. Harold spent hours tending it, even when his back ached and his knees protested. Sarah kept working as a trucker, but now she came home. To a real home. "Never thought I'd have this," she confessed one evening. "Never imagined I'd have a place to return to." "You always had it," Margaret replied. "You just needed to find it." But the past doesn't forget easily. It was on a sweltering afternoon, almost a year later, when the car appeared. Margaret was picking tomatoes when she saw it. A black car, gleaming in the sun. Her stomach turned over. "Harold!" she called, tense. "They're here!" The car stopped. Jennifer got out first, but she looked different. Thinner, dark circles under her eyes, wrinkled clothes. Robert, too, without his former arrogance. They walked to the porch, slowly. "Mom, Dad." Jennifer's voice came out small. Margaret crossed her arms, said nothing. "Can we talk?" "Depends," Harold spoke. "What did you come for? Because you won't get money." "We didn't come for money." Robert looked at his feet. "We came because we needed to see you." "Needed," Margaret repeated without emotion. "Funny how need only strikes when it's convenient." Jennifer swallowed hard. Her voice trembled. "The engagement ended. My fiancé found out about the abandonment. Called everything off." Tears fell. "Said he wouldn't marry someone who did that to their own parents." Robert continued. "And I lost my job. The story leaked. They fired me for moral reasons." A bitter laugh. "Me, who always thought I was better than everyone." Margaret looked at them, saw the children she'd raised, loved, lost, felt deep sadness for everything that could have been. "And you came expecting what? That we'd forgive and forget?" "No," Jennifer shook her head. "We don't deserve forgiveness. We just wanted you to know we regret it, truly." "Regret doesn't erase what was done," Harold spoke, exhausted. "You left us to die. We know." Robert wiped his eyes. "And we'll carry that for the rest of our lives." Heavy silence. Margaret breathed deep. "I spent my whole life thinking being a mother meant enduring everything, forgiving everything, loving unconditionally." She looked at her children. "But I learned that love has limits, that you can love someone and still not accept being destroyed by them." Jennifer sobbed. Mom, let me finish. Firm voice. You want regret? Fine. Regret. But don't expect us to go back to what we were. Those parents died on that road. Who we are now is different. But you're still our parents, Robert whispered. We are. We always will be. But you stopped being our children the day you abandoned us. Harold approached. Child isn't a birth title. It's action. It's choice. It's being present. And you chose not to be. Margaret completed. There was no argument that could change that truth. You can go now. We don't wish you harm, but we don't wish you anything at all. Jennifer and Robert walked back to the car, shoulders slumped. Before driving away, Jennifer opened the window. Mom, are you happy here? Margaret looked around. The simple ranch, the yellow house, the chicken coop. Happier than I've ever been in my entire life. Pure truth. The car left, and Margaret felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, only peace. 2 years later, on a spring morning, Margaret woke to sun streaming through the window, went downstairs. Harold was making coffee. Good morning, sweetheart. Good morning. 76 years old and you still make coffee better than me. They laughed. That easy laugh of people at peace with life. Sarah appeared yawning. Morning, family. Family. The word sounded perfect. After breakfast, Margaret went to collect eggs, and she saw it. Pearl stood in a corner, quiet, in that posture she took when she was about to lay. Margaret waited. The chicken clucked. Once, twice, 3 times. In the nest, an egg. Perfect, white, whole. Margaret picked it up carefully, felt its warmth, ran back inside. Harold! Sarah, look! What happened? She showed them the egg, eyes shining. Pearl. She laid an egg, but she's too old. Sarah frowned. 8-year-old chickens don't lay anymore. This one did. Margaret smiled. Because miracles happen when you least expect them. The 3 of them stared at the egg like treasure. Not the egg itself, but what it represented. New beginning, new life, hope. That afternoon on the porch, Margaret had a revelation. You know what I realized? We spent 70 years chasing the wrong thing. What do you mean? We ran after approval, thinking if we were good enough parents, loved enough, we'd be loved back. Harold stayed quiet. But love isn't currency. You don't buy love by being good. Some people don't have the capacity to love back. So what do we do with that? Sarah asked. We stop wasting love on those who don't want it, and give it to those who deserve it. Like you did with me, Sarah whispered. Like you did with us first. Good silence, full of understanding. I'm 74 years old and it took me this long to learn. Family isn't blood. It's choice. It's who stays when you lose everything. Harold agreed. And you know what else? Margaret took both their hands. I spent my life thinking I'd failed as a mother. Because my children abandoned me. But now I understand. I didn't fail. They failed as children. And it's not my job to carry their mistakes. The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. For years, I asked myself what I did wrong. But now I know. Nothing. I gave my best. If they threw it away, that's their problem. Tears of relief fell. We didn't fail, Harold. We just loved the wrong people. But now we're loving the right ones. They looked at Sarah. She cried. You have no idea what you mean to me. I spent 35 years alone, thinking something was wrong with me because my mother abandoned me. She wiped tears. But you showed me the problem was never me. It was never you, Margaret confirmed. It was her who didn't know how to love. Like our children, Harold added. It wasn't us who weren't good enough. It was them. As the sun began to set, Margaret went to the chicken coop. Pearl scratched happily. Thank you for teaching me we can be reborn at any age. The chicken clucked, as if she understood. Margaret walked back. Harold and Sarah were talking, laughing. She stopped, just watching. This was her family, not the one born with her, the one that chose to stay. And she understood the lesson that took 74 years to learn. Life isn't about the people you lose. It's about the ones you find after. It's not about the love that rejected you. It's about the love that chose you. It's not about how many years you lived. It's about how many times you had the courage to start over. She'd lost children, gained a daughter, lost a house, gained a home, lost one life, gained a reason to live. It's never too late to be happy, Never too late to find true love. Never too late to begin again. Because as long as there's life, there's chance. And as long as there's chance, there's hope. Margaret sat between Harold and Sarah. Pearl clucked. The sun gave way to stars. And there, on that simple ranch, 3 lives the world had thrown away found what they'd always searched for. Not wealth, not fame, not approval. They found belonging, peace, home. "Mom," Sarah spoke softly. "Do you regret anything?" Margaret thought. Looked at the years she'd lived, the pain she'd carried, the children she'd lost. No, because if I hadn't suffered, I wouldn't have gotten here, wouldn't have found you, and that was worth every tear. Sarah hugged her tight, and Margaret understood that was the true ending. Not when the villains paid, not when justice was served, not when money appeared, but when she forgave herself for loving people who didn't know how to love back, when she understood her only fault was having a heart too big in a world of small hearts, and when she accepted that the best revenge isn't making others pay, it's being happy despite them. 3 more years passed like water flowing. Margaret turned 77 on a Tuesday. Sarah baked a cake. Harold picked wildflowers. They ate on the porch as the sun went down. "Make a wish," Sarah said, holding the cake with lit candles. Margaret closed her eyes, but she didn't wish for anything, because she already had everything she needed. She blew out the candles. They clapped. "What did you wish for?" Harold asked. "Nothing. I have everything I want." And it was true. So deeply true it hurt in the best way. That night, lying in bed beside Harold, Margaret stared at the ceiling. "You awake?" she whispered. "Yeah. I was thinking about something." "What?" "About that day on the road, when they left us." Harold tensed. "Why think about that?" "Because I realized something. That day I thought my life was ending. Thought everything was over." She turned to look at him in the darkness. But it was just beginning. He reached for her hand. If they hadn't abandoned us, we'd still be living in their house, still being treated like burdens, still dying a little bit every day from being unwanted. Her voice caught. "But because they threw us away, we found Sarah, found this place, found real family." "So you're saying it was worth it?" "I'm saying God works in strange ways. He used their evil to create our good." They lay in silence, holding hands. "Harold? Thank you for not dying on that road. Thank you for not letting me." On a morning that felt like any other but wasn't, Margaret was feeding the chickens when she heard it. A car engine. Her body tensed automatically, preparing for another confrontation. But it wasn't Jennifer or Robert. It was a young woman, maybe 30, stepping out of a modest sedan. She had Jennifer's eyes. Margaret's heart clenched. "Can I help you?" Margaret called out, not moving from the chicken coop. "Are you Margaret Mitchell?" "I am." The young woman walked closer, hesitant. "I'm Emma, Jennifer's daughter. Your granddaughter." The word hung in the air between them. Margaret hadn't seen this girl since she was 16. Now she was a woman. "What do you want?" Emma bit her lip, looked at her shoes. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. "I wanted to say I'm sorry, for not coming sooner, for not standing up to my mother when she did what she did. You were just a child. I was 16, old enough to know it was wrong." Tears fell freely now. "I've thought about you every day, wondered if you were okay, if you were even alive." Margaret's throat tightened. "Why didn't you come before?" "My mother threatened to cut me off from college tuition if I contacted you, and I was scared, selfish, weak." Emma wiped her face. "But I graduated last year, got a job, and I don't need her anymore. Don't want anything from people who could do what she did." They stood there, grandmother and granddaughter, separated by years of silence and pain. "I don't want money," Emma said quickly. "I don't want the ranch or anything. I needed you to know that not everyone in that family is like them, that some of us still have hearts." Margaret studied the young woman, saw sincerity there, saw regret, saw her own reflection from years ago, someone trying to break free from toxic family patterns. "Come inside," Margaret said finally. "Have some coffee." Emma's face lit up. "Really? Really?" They walked to the house together. Sarah and Harold looked up surprised when they entered. "This is Emma," Margaret introduced. "My granddaughter. She's staying for coffee." Sarah immediately stood. "I'll put on a fresh pot." They sat around the kitchen table, awkward at first. Then Emma started asking questions about their life, the ranch, how they'd survived. Margaret answered honestly, didn't sugarcoat the pain, didn't pretend it was fine. Your mother made choices, Margaret said. Terrible choices, and I can't pretend they didn't nearly destroy us. I know, but you're not her. You get to make your own choices. Emma nodded, crying quietly. Do you forgive her? Emma asked. My mother? Margaret thought carefully before answering. I forgive her enough to not wish her harm, but I don't forget what she did. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone hurt you again. It means releasing yourself from the poison of hatred. So you don't hate her? No, I pity her. Because she threw away something precious and she'll never get it back. Emma stayed for 2 hours. When she left, she hugged Margaret tight. Can I come back? Visit sometimes? Margaret hesitated only a moment. You can. After Emma drove away, Sarah looked at Margaret. You okay? Yeah, I am. And she meant it. Because she'd learned that you can hold people accountable and still leave the door cracked open for those willing to do better. Not everyone deserves unlimited chances, but genuine remorse deserves acknowledgement. When Margaret turned 80, the party was small. Just Sarah, Harold, Emma, who'd become a regular visitor, and a few neighbors they'd befriended. Pearl was still alive, ancient for a chicken, moving slower but still ruling the coop with an iron wing. As Margaret blew out her candles, she looked around at the faces gathered there. Not many people, but the right people. Speech, Sarah called out, grinning. Margaret laughed. I'm not good at speeches. Try, Harold encouraged. She stood, feeling her age in her bones, but also feeling something else. Lightness. Joy. Okay, I'll say this. I wasted 70 years of my life chasing the wrong things. Chasing approval from people who couldn't give it. Trying to earn love from people who didn't know how to give it. She looked around the table. But these last 10 years? These have been the best of my life. Not because I'm rich. Not because I have everything. But because I finally have what matters. I have people who chose me. Who stayed when things got hard. Who loved me without conditions. Her voice broke, but she continued. If you're holding on to people who don't want you, let them go. If you're waiting for family to change, stop waiting. If you think you're too old to start over, you're wrong. She looked at Pearl through the window. That chicken laid an egg at 8 years old. I found true family at 74. It's never too late. Everyone was crying now, even Harold, who never cried. Life's too short to waste on people who don't see your worth. Find your people. Build your family. Choose love that chooses you back. They stood, all of them, and hugged in the middle of that small ranch house. And Margaret finally understood the true inheritance she'd received. Not $20 million, not land or property, but the wisdom that took 80 years to learn. You're not defined by who abandons you. You're defined by who you become after they leave. Family is not blood. It's commitment. Love is not obligation. It's choice. And the best revenge is not making them sorry. It's making yourself happy.